The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRCMedia, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Thank you for joining us today. And as we've done for the past couple of weeks, we're sort of taking an in-depth look at some issues that are impacting Fall River and the South Coast. And one of the issues we're going to focus on today, the issue we're focusing on today, is the future of SouthCoast Rail. As you all may remember, it was promised that SouthCoast Rail would probably start around this time of the year, but it has been delayed. We're going to talk about that and other issues with SouthCoast Rail. I'm pleased to be joined by Jean Fox. She's the project manager for SouthCoast Rail. Jean, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith. Pleasure to be here.
So let's just get right to brass tacks. You know, for a long time it was talked about that SouthCoast Rail commuter service would have started around this time, late 2023. Right. What is the delay and what's the timeline look like now?
Well, we're looking now at summer. So we do admit there is a delay. I think in the overall scheme of things, it's really not terrible. Mm-hmm. What we're doing is a very exhaustive testing and commissioning piece. Where we had initially anticipated being able to do some of that overlapping with construction, that's no longer the case. Mm-hmm. We have several overseeing agencies. So we have MBTA's railroad operations. We have Keolis, who operates the commuter rail system for the MBTA. And we have the Federal Railroad Administration. And all of them have to be absolutely assured that when we put passengers on trains, we're doing it safely and we're doing it properly, which means every T must be crossed. So this is a very thorough and exhaustive process, and a lot of the testing has to do with the signal system. So you have automatic train control, you have positive train control. Each of those systems components has hundreds, some up to 2,000 testing pieces that have to be done. So it's a lot, it's a lot of detail, and then again, it's the oversight of different entities that need to be comfortable that we've done everything well. But on top of that, we have to safety certify every wall, every bridge, every culvert, every piece of track, every piece of equipment. So, you know, we maybe were a little optimistic in thinking we could expedite this, but in this day and age, with a new concentrated look at making sure we can connect people by train throughout the country, it has to be done the right way.
Now, has construction pretty much been finalized? I know the Fall River line here has been done for quite a while.
The Saran wrap now,
right,
yeah.
Right, yeah, pretty much, right? So what is the status of construction as we are here in late November, early December?
Sure, we've done extraordinarily well with construction. You know, the Fall River line was completed quite a while ago when we had the big groundbreaking with the governor down here last December.
Right, the Freetown Station.
Yes,
yeah.
At the Freetown Station. And it was very exciting. Now, that was the smaller of the two contracts. Yeah. The larger one was the New Bedford, Middleborough, and Signals contract. So we knew that would go on. Construction-wise, again, we've done really, really well. We're wrapping up the two stations in New Bedford and the layover. The one that's running a little bit late is the Taunton station, East Taunton, the one that's at 140 and 24. And that's because that is our largest, most complex station. There were a few minor supply chain issues there, but they resequenced jobs. They still, you know, soldiered on, and they've done really, really well. We anticipate that'll be done in the early part of the winter.
Yeah, I know that, you know, we've been waiting for so long for SouthCoast Rail. Governor Weld, back in 1990 when he ran, right? The promise, sue me if we don't do it. And I guess in some ways, you know, to have a delay of about 6 months after waiting 30 years, you know, it's, as you said, it's for the right reasons, right?
It is for the right reasons, but frustrating.
Yeah.
I mean, I can get it that we were all excited and we were on, and I'm the top of that list, I promise you. I was so excited to be hopefully getting on a train now, but I agree. Keith, we need to do this the right way, and that's what the MBTA is focused on right now. So 6 months it is. We just have to suck it up and get on a train in the summer.
Yeah. You know, back to the testing, you mentioned the 3 entities that are involved. Can this testing be done simultaneously? Do they have to be individualized testing for each entity, and is that like a reason why we're also delayed?
And we're working together. All the entities are all working together.
Okay.
They have just, FRA actually introduced some new requirements that you have to separate things out as you're testing. And certainly the MBTA and Keolis are supportive of all of that. Again, it's for the right reasons. It's to make sure everything is done properly.
Yeah. As we, you know, as we move forward to next year and what's going to be happening, I know that there's been a lot of work that people here in Fall River have seen,
Yes.
right? There has been some testing. There have been some trains coming down that
Yes.
track. And I know that there was a big effort spring and summer about safety, local safety.
Yes.
Not only public safety, there was a training, I believe, in Freetown not
Yes.
too long ago for public safety officials,
Yes.
but also keeping the locals alert of what's going on. How's that process been going? And have people been heeding those calls to get off the tracks because there's more activity taking place than before?
Yeah, it's, I wish it were going better, to be honest. I wish people understood the dangers and hazards of being on the railroad tracks.
Right.
I think, I don't want to oversaturate people with it when they're not seeing commuter rail trains yet. So it's certainly more palpably you can feel it more when you're seeing trains go flying by.
Right.
And you're not seeing that right now. So from people's own perspective, the future danger is not the current danger, and they're not heeding it. But we are circulating materials all over the place to let people know how dangerous it is.
Now, you get some brochures
I
with
did.
you, right?
I brought some brochures. I have a lovely little book to read to children.
Right.
And there's little quizzes they can learn about what's safe and what's not safe on railroad tracks. So certainly putting that penny on the railroad track is a bad idea. Riding your bike on the railroad tracks is a bad idea. Using it as a shortcut, very bad idea. And the other thing we have here in the 3 cities primarily is a homeless problem.
Right.
So we had a lot of homeless people that have taken up residence right next to the tracks. And I'll tell you, one day there was one gentleman sleeping right up next to the tracks, and thankfully it was a slow freight train. They were able to stop and get him to move. But that is something that I know the city's looking at very closely, and they have a fantastic coalition here in the city of Fall River, that really incredibly dedicated group of individuals who work with the homeless to try to get them away from the tracks. But it's a secluded area, it's a quiet area, so it's a draw for that population. But I don't want to see people thinking the railroad tracks are recreational avenues. They're not for ATVs, and they're not for walking the dog, and they're not even for hunters. I know hunters, we've seen hunters walking down the tracks to get to where they, to get to the woods. So we're going to be launching a more intense campaign when the test trains start running next spring, because they will be running initially at 59 miles an hour, which is infinitely faster than what we see freight run at.
Yeah.
Yes. And then after that, we're going to do simulated service, which is trains at actual speeds on the actual schedule without passengers. And that'll be, people will need to be aware at that time that it is very unsafe to be anywhere near the railroad. Only cross where you should.
Now, in terms of testing trains, and you know, as I said, that's been happening here in
Yes.
Fall River. Is that testing going to be slowed down during the winter months, or is that still going to continue? What's the schedule?
Well,
like
they've got some what we call de-stressing to do. So that's where they go in and they calibrate the integrity of the track. So in extreme cold or extreme heat, you can affect the integrity of the track. So that has to all be done. The records are spit out, and if there's an area that needs to be rectified, it's promptly done. Once that's done, you can move on to the next phase. The geo car runs over it, that's another train, and then you get the test trains going at faster speeds, but not until that's certified and done.
And that probably won't be seen until spring next year.
Extreme cold, can't do it.
All right. So, you know, another thing that I know we've talked about in the past was just your general communication to those neighbors that are along the route.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you still hear some complaints and some calls, some grumbles. I guess, how has that evolved, and how do you continue to reach out to those folks? I'm sure through the city as well, right?
Sure. We have regular meetings with most of the municipalities in the cities right now. We also have an open book for anybody who has a concern or a complaint. I will say the initial concerns started when we did all the tree clearing. So what people saw as a verdant area wasn't anymore, and that's law. We have to clear the tracks for these trains. But it changed your backyard in some places, you know. So that was an issue, but we've worked on some noise mitigation funding to help people, and sometimes that's vegetation. If you plant arborvitaes in your backyard, then you don't see the train tracks anymore. And we do have some of that. We have a lot of that in Fall River. Some of our condo and apartment buildings are right up on the tracks. And they didn't want to see them. They like the trees, but we had to remove those. And overall, I think there's now a greater level of excitement that we're going to have this connection that we haven't had in 60 years. That we're going to have an easier way to get in and out of Greater Boston for all kinds of reasons, whether you want to go to college there, or you want to go for your health care there, or you want to go to the theater there, or you just want to go partway there and not have to drive. I think I'm feeling, while not everybody's tickled pink about it, I'm feeling overall a greater sense of excitement that this connection is vital, is going to generate and stimulate economic development, and is going to reconnect a region that has always been vibrant, always such an important part of the Commonwealth. But with the only way to get out of here to there is Route 24, it's so frustrating for people. It's nice to have an option.
Let me ask you in terms of potential ridership. You know, obviously during the pandemic, across the entire rail system, subways in Boston, you know, commuter rail, ridership went down.
Yes.
I believe it's picking up a little bit.
Yes.
I know that when the planning for SouthCoast Rail was done, I'm sure there were some potential numbers that were generated. How do you feel that will translate when this opens in the summer? Are we gonna hit those targets, I guess? And have there been any changes to those targets?
So no, we haven't actually revisited them at all, nor has the MBTA overall, because the goal is to get our ridership back up to pre-pandemic levels, of course. We're inching our way there. I think a lot of people had some problems with, for example, if you had to get into Boston and grab a subway train, it wasn't always a guarantee you were going to get somewhere. But we have new leadership at the MBTA, and they're working very diligently on making sure that those problems go away. Public transportation in the MBTA needs to be a viable choice for people. It needs to be a reliable choice for people. And I see SouthCoast Rail getting us into Boston as absolutely that. After you're in there, there's still work to be done.
You know, I asked you this before we started. You know, there's been, and you mentioned some of it here, criticism of the MBTA, of trains, slower trains, mismanagement, fiscal issues. Is there anything there that could potentially stymie SouthCoast Rail, delay it even further, that, you know, that may be an issue as we head toward 2024 and then the summer?
I don't anticipate any of that. First of all, we're all new. And I know Green Line was too, and the gauge was wrong, but that's part of the safety certification. The main issues that GM Eng is working on, and he's been diving in with both feet, is fixing the subway system. We know that there's been neglect there for a long time. You'll find that in many of the larger cities. You'll find that, remember, the DC Metro had to shut down several years ago for similar reasons. You know, they built it and then they left it. That's not how these things function. It's just like your car. You have to maintain it. So he's working really, really hard and doing a fantastic job at getting that subway system up and running. And there's going to be a renewed focus on some of the older commuter rail lines too, where maybe additional maintenance may be necessary. But everything south of the Middleborough Secondary is brand new. So we don't anticipate that being a problem. If there were a problem, it would be on the subway end of things once you get into the city. So you get into South Station, if you need to take the Red Line to go somewhere, if that's still not running well, then people may say, never mind, I'll get in my car. But we have every anticipation that GM Eng is going to get that all up and running in due course, because he's actually put an aggressive schedule out there and told them to get it done.
Yeah. I want to go back briefly in terms of the history of this project. Not back to 1990.
Please don't.
With Governor Well, we don't need to go that far back. But just, you know, when you know, plans were made, you know, 5-6 years ago that this was going to move forward, and then we had COVID hit.
Yeah.
But during COVID, nothing really changed. The process still moved forward. And I
Yes.
remember speaking to you at that time saying, well, the goal was the end of 2023, and that was still the goal.
Yes.
So I guess how impressive is this project with all the supply chain issues, with COVID, with the processing of regulations, environmental and the like, that this actually moved forward in a manner that was really timely?
Oh, I think this is the poster child for how to do it right. Certainly from a construction perspective, we've done phenomenally well, given all those hiccups you mentioned. COVID meant two people couldn't ride in the same vehicle to a job site. And everybody had to have PPE, and they couldn't work closer than 6 feet to each other. You resequence the job, you work with your teams, and you get it done. They never lost a step in the whole process. Super exciting. We also had, and I can't give myself credit for this, I'd love to have, but we had people on the team who said, wait, these kinds of things are long lead. We need to order them early. So some special track work, some switches, some things that we knew would take longer to get here, we ordered several years ago, so they were here. Other projects were trying to steal them from us, and we said, no, they're going to SouthCoast Rail.
You lose,
That's right. We did. We ordered all that stuff, and we got it done, and we got it in so that we didn't have to skip a beat on that. So construction-wise, phenomenal job. The contractors did a great job. Our construction management team did a great job. Supply chain, I mentioned earlier, a little bit with some things, but again, resequencing a job. If your PVC pipe was late coming in, go do some structural steel. And that's what they did. So they could keep everything going, keep the crews working, take advantage. We're seasonal here. There's things you can't do over the winter. They did an excellent job. I'm absolutely astounded by how well our construction went.
And this construction contractors, they've worked on other MBTA projects in the past.
Yep.
So obviously they knew the routine in some
They
ways.
did. We had Skanska DW White as a joint venture on the Fall River contract, and I believe they're working on the Route 79 project now, DW White is.
Right.
And then we had Middlesex Tudor Perini on the larger one, the Middleborough, New Bedford, and Signals contract. And Middlesex, I believe, was part of the Green Line. They did not do the rail piece. They had a subcontractor, not our subcontractor. Our subcontractor is Delta, and they've done a great job on the actual rails. So there's a million subcontractors for all these folks, but the leads on it are familiar with the MBTA processes and what they had to do.
I want to talk a little bit about the cooperation of the communities. You've got Taunton, you have Freetown, communities in between, and obviously the big anchor cities of Fall River and New Bedford. How's that relationship worked for you throughout this entire process? I mean, it helps that in terms of, in Fall River, Mayor Coogan's been in office since 2020, Mayor Mitchell in New Bedford longer than that. So there's been some stability there. Has that helped? I guess talk about the communication with local officials and how that's worked.
It's been great. I have to be honest. When I first started, when we got into construction, my initial goal was to try to set up meetings with the cities primarily, and it's also some of the towns. So Middleborough was at the top of the list because they had traffic concerns that were really...
Right.
So we've been meeting regularly with department heads, public safety, all the folks that have a vested interest in this. And it's been a cooperative and informative relationship, very transparent. Certainly in Fall River, good relationship, you're right, with the mayor's office, but also with the Homeless Coalition. Paul Ferlin and Dan Aguiar and City Hall. We're partners in this. And I think that that's the way to approach these things. It's not an us and them thing. It's everybody's in this together thing. And so that communication has been vital to the success of the project and to making sure that it's not an imposition. Whenever you build something, you're putting somebody out. There's no way around that. You're closing lanes and putting detours in. But when the city knows and can work with you and help disseminate that information, it's so helpful, and that's exactly where we've found ourselves. We've got that cooperative spirit going, and it has been enormously helpful.
And there's also been a series of community meetings as well.
Yes.
I remember one here in Fall River. There was talk about how much the city would be paying and contributing to the system and all
right.
that
assessment.
debate. Right, the assessment where
Right.
the city is not being assessed at
No.
all because of their assessment for CERTA.
CERTA, that's right.
So
That's
there's no extra cost for the
Nope,
city.
there isn't, and that was good to get that out in the public because there was so much misinformation about that, and that's not what you want. So when you're in sync and the city's in sync and we can deliver the same messaging, it really does help. And the city was present at that meeting, and I've had several in Fall River, and I've had meetings with neighborhood groups in the city, just to let them know what's happening and answer questions, and I think that's helpful.
As we move toward the end of 2023 and the launch next summer, I do want to ask you some questions I've asked in the past. You still may not have answers for, but I'm going to ask anyway. I know that for the entire South Coast Rail, I believe there's 26 trains?
26 trains, that's right. We
daily?
have 24 that currently go to the Middleborough line. We're adding 2, so daily 26 trips.
Right, 26 trips. That will come down to Middleborough or to the branch?
They split in Taunton, basically.
Right.
They split down to Fall River and New Bedford. So say 6 peak period trains. Let's just look at the morning. You have 6 coming, going back and forth to South Station. 3 will leave Fall River and 3 will leave New Bedford. They'll join up in Taunton and then go up to South Station from there. So the split is an even split during peak period. If you are afraid you're not going to get one of those trains, if you go just down the road to Taunton, you have double the options.
Right, in some ways, because
Right?
they both go
They
there.
convene there and
Right.
converge there, and then they all go the same route.
So are those 3 peak trains morning and evening?
Yeah, there's another 3 in the evening, and there's probably 1 or 2 during the day. And right now, we anticipate some weekend service. This is all railroad operations. You mentioned it earlier on. The pandemic kind of changed everything. People are going in and out of the office on different days at different times. We need to calibrate schedules a little bit, and I know they're looking at that. So what is existing today coming out of Middleborough going into Boston may not be by next summer what we're doing. That is subject to change. It has to be fluid. You have to be able to serve people when they need to get on the train.
So when you anticipate having a schedule for potential riders?
There's 5 drafts already circulating.
I can imagine.
5 drafts circulating right now. So it's still, by the time we are ready to run trains and when we're doing the simulated service, we should have a schedule by then.
So spring-ish?
Well, yeah, mid to late spring-ish, I'm hoping.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have it now. Literally 5 drafts.
Now, in terms of what people can expect to pay, how does that look?
Yeah, I still don't have that answer because they're still looking. I know they're looking at a whole bunch of different scenarios like student pricing and senior pricing and things like that. And sometimes when they launch a new line, which they haven't done in a long time, they offer some special deals. And of course, they should have the monthly passes and things like that. But the actual fare, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
No,
Well, again,
I don't even know what the parking will be.
well, I was just going to ask about that because people are going to need to park at that lot. but
Yeah,
you don't know that.
usually the more remote the lot, the less it costs. So the Fall River, Freetown lots, the New Bedford lots would be less than anything. As you get closer to Boston, they get a little pricier.
Right. And is that all, there's formulas, I'm sure, that are involved
yeah.
in this? And I love the way you laugh because I'm sure you see all these machinations and formulas
Yes.
and don't understand it yourself.
No.
And trying to explain it to the community may be difficult.
There's a black box. They put everything in the black box and mix it all up, and hopefully something comes out. I don't know.
Yeah. But again, we're looking to find out probably around springtime.
I hope so. I hope people want to know that so they can plan accordingly. And if there are, like they're changing up the whole Charlie card thing right now.
Right.
So, you can't just reload. You have to do a different thing. We're looking at, like they do in Europe, when I went to visit my daughter, you take your phone and tap it, and that's how you pay. You don't have a separate card to ride the subways. And that's where we're going to. So that's the other thing that's going to have to happen. When we do launch, we need to make sure we have some ambassadors at each station to help people figure out, how to pay, how to get on, where to get off. I mean, it's all going to be new to so many folks.
And are there going to be like kiosks at the? Because I don't remember
Probably.
seeing that. I mean, we don't have anything there now.
We
at the Fall
don't.
River,
No,
right?
we wouldn't
So
put
that'll
that
be
in.
some-
We have because they're still looking through different ways of doing that. I think the whole fare collecting system is still being examined. We have set it up to put a kiosk there,
Right.
but it's not there
Not
right
there
now.
yet.
No, I wouldn't put it up.
So let me just ask you, in terms of any kind of grand openings. Has been any plans at all about maybe getting the governor down? I mean, Governor Baker went to Freetown.
Yes.
You know, obviously you've got Fall River, New Bedford, you also get Taunton, so you got 3 stations, three main stations.
3 big cities.
To get some representation.
Yeah.
Are those plans starting to get worked out as well?
I am so excited. I want to do a big launch, obviously. I really want it. This is something we have waited for so long. It's $1 billion investment that the Commonwealth has put into our region that I'm not saying we don't deserve, we do, and we've waited very patiently. So we have to do a big launch, and I just don't know what that's going to look like yet, but that I think, first of all, Governor Healy has long been a supporter of SouthCoast Rail. She has never stepped back from it. Even when she was Attorney General, she was a very strong supporter. So I think Governor Healy, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, I think they're all going to want to be down here for a big party. We'll see how that looks in the end.
And just thinking territorially, I'm sure New Bedford wants a party, Fall River wants a party,
Taunton wants a party.
Freetown sort of already had theirs.
Well, that's all right. We had theirs. Yeah, that's all set. Freetown had. Well, it was a good place to do it. That station was ready to go, ample parking, all of that. So yeah, we'll have to figure that out. I think that this deserves quite the launch.
Nice. Well, Gene Fox, I appreciate your time, SouthCoast Rail. I know we'll be communicating between now and then.
We will.
And I'm sure, you know, the community will be hearing more from your office about things that are happening, right?
Yes, absolutely. We want to make sure if anyone has any questions, just Google SouthCoast Rail, you'll find us. We're happy to respond to any questions or concerns, and we want to thank everybody for their support and their patience over these last few years, because it hasn't been easy, and we get that. And 2024 should be a great year. Banner year. Absolutely. Well, Jean, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you. Pleasure. And thank you for joining us here in FRC Media News. FRC Media News airs Thursdays at 6 p.m. and Fridays at 5:30 p.m. You can also find out more by visiting our website, frmedia.org. So for all of us here at FRC Media News, I'm Keith Tebow. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.